Você Afternoon. Thank you, Premier. Pray. Heavenly Father God, we thank you for your goodness, for your mercies towards us, and we thank you, God, for your mercies and Anguilla. This time, God, we pray for those who are hospitalized, those who are home and feeling unwell. Pray for their recovery and pray for their healing. Father God, we also say a special prayer for those who have lost loved ones and are in this time bereaving. We pray, dear Father, for strength. You may give them strength that they may be able to just go through this process, go through this period. Father, we pray for Anguilla and the wider Caribbean. Pray for the world at large. Guide us through the many geopolitical challenges that we are facing. We pray that peace and understanding may prevail. Help us in Anguilla, Father God, to grow from strength to strength as we navigate our way through our life. Thank you for bringing us to another press conference. Pray that we may enlighten the people of Angola today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, we want to start by extending our deepest and heartfelt condolences to the family, friends, and loved ones of Idris Phillips, Glastonbury Brooks, who everyone knew as Gassie, Muriel Owens, Ethel Gomes, Rhonda Smith, Eileen Mussington, and Shane Kishan Hughes. And so we ask that we keep the family in our prayers. I will ask the Minister of Education to start us off with it.
Pleasant good afternoon to everyone in Radio Land. This afternoon, I want to begin by expressing sincere gratitude, responsible, ending job, observation was observed first last evening. This also once again rise of Roger, arts, culture, and sports, Dr. Lawrence Testing. Good afternoon, everyone. Those listening via Facebook Live and Radio Land, a pleasant good evening to everyone. I wish to start by putting on record my sincerest gratitude to Mrs. Kamaloy Murphy for the outstanding work she has done as the Gender Affairs Coordinator. She's the only person in that unit, and she's done an outstanding job once again to organize Women's Week under the theme Give to Gain. It was observed from March 1st to 8th, and it culminated yesterday evening at the Seventh day Adventist Church in Mount Fortune. And I also want to acknowledge once again our RISE awardees. Excellence in Leadership, Ms. Kala Gomes. Community Impact, Mrs. Jamila Morrison Hodge. Entrepreneurial Excellence, Ms. Angela Rogers. Arts, Culture, and Sports, Ms. Rudy Richardson. Emerging Leader, Ms. Kashama Lewis. STEM Innovator, Dr. Winoma Lawrence. And Lifetime Achievement, Mrs. Rosina Brooks. Again, congratulations to all of them. The probation staff are currently undergoing training this week on the Pronto case management system. This is a system that essentially will digitize the entire probation team. It will ensure that They have accessible record keeping. Everything is digitized. It will increase and improve efficiency and overall case management. Also, the Chief Probation Officer designate has been identified, and it is our hope that that person will be announced in short order by the Deputy Governor's Office. With respect to education, with the support of the ministry in exploring additional education offerings for students, Solar Sands provided a glass blowing and glass firing demonstration for art, WISE, and PRU students at the Albina Lake Hodge Comprehensive School. Wednesday, 4th March, we are looking for ways to expand this beyond this small grouping of students because it's an excellent opportunity for us here in Anguilla. There's a partnership with education, the Anguilla Robotics Association, Identity Digital, Virginia Tech, and of course, the Ministry of Maiku as well. It's being developed to support and develop STEM initiatives and activities in Anguilla and formal and informal education sector. As a matter of fact, the minister and I recently agreed, this is Minister Josie Vanterpool, recently agreed to support a team that will be going up from Anguilla up to Virginia Tech in early July. It will be an exchange. It will be a combination of robotics students, robotics practitioners, but also STEM educators in the Department of Education. And there'll also be a team coming down from Virginia Tech 2 weeks after that to be able to provide underground support to our teams here in Anguilla. This is being supported by Digital, who is going to be taking care of all of the teaching instructions and stuff on once they're there in the US. They'll also be taking care of accommodations while they're there. The respective ministries between ministry and Minister Vanterpool's ministry will be taking care of tickets and other associated costs for, of course, the team that's going to be going up from. March is Music in Schools Month at the Albina Lake Hodge Comprehensive School. We're going to have master classes and workshops, lunchtime concerts, and of course, portion of the school band. I want to thank the music department of the Albina Lake Hodge Comprehensive School for the excellent work that they've been doing. They've been able to showcase quite a bit of their work in various aspects, various grades, and so quite impressive and outstanding. We recently organized the parade in honor of late James. I wish to put on record my sincerest gratitude, particularly to Ms. Sandra Foy and her team for the outstanding job that they did to organize that very, very successful showing. Anguilla also hosted the opening ceremony of the University of West Indies Technical Advisory Committees, a virtual meeting that was held last week, and it was a success. UE continues to thank Anguilla for its continued commitment and dedication to diversity and the institution. Members of the Literary and Debating Society will participate in the 54th Leeward Island Debating Competition to be held in Nevis from the 11th to the 16th of March, 2026. And so we wish the entire team best wishes and much success. On March 18th, I will be participating in a panel discussion at the CXC conference under the theme CXC, Responsible Generative AI Policy Framework for Secondary Education, a roadmap and implementation arrangements with partners. That will be held in Jamaica. We are in the process of drafting a literacy policy and strategy for Anguilla. The draft policy should be ready in a couple of weeks, and once it's completed, it will go for consultations with the relevant stakeholders. This includes reading teachers as well as other relevant stakeholders. And then once feedback is received, we'll go back to the drawing board and complete the draft document. And it is our hope to implement that planned strategy for September 2026. I don't think it's a surprise that we've been having some challenges in that area for quite a number of years. Statistics data will show you that there are significant gaps in both our literacy and our numeracy rates, and it is extremely important that we put a strategy in place to address those concerns. We'll also have a UNICEF-funded school safety study tour. A small delegation will visit St. Martin on a UNICEF-funded study tour to observe school safety and security practices. The visit will inform improvements to safety standards and preparedness across schools in Anguilla. There's also going to be an educational study visit to Collier County, Florida. This was originally planned for mid last year, however, it was postponed. A delegation of educators and officials will participate in the study visit to Collier County School District in Florida from the 22nd to the 28th of March. The visit will support professional learning and exchange and best practices to strengthen the education system in Anguilla. The trip is predominantly funded by the Schultz Foundation, so we thank them for their contribution to this study tour. Ministry of Social Development hosted a away day on February 16th, where all department heads were able to present their work plans for the 2026 year. There will also be away days every quarter to be able to keep all department heads on track with the general goals for 2026. There's also in the works the development of an education master plan that has started between the Ministry of Education, Department of Education, and of course the Education Planning Unit. The first steps have been identified. Executive Council recently approved the salary increases for the pre-primary school teachers, and so their retroactive salary should be paid from January, should be paid by now. The cannabis pilot conducted in collaboration with the Royal Anguilla Police Force ended in December. However, limited data collection prevented a meaningful analysis to guide decision-making. The pilot has concluded, but the practice of not prosecuting possession of small quantities of cannabis will continue while the role of the Drug Advisory Committee is being considered. MSD continues to transition its community centers to community services unit to strengthen the focus on community work. New job descriptions have been issued to the center managers, and they're now being titled community development officers. We're still walking through the various governance aspects of them because the funding associated with centers remain at the Department of Youth and Culture until we complete this pilot. The Department of Social Development, the data entry continues the information management system for social protection. So just to remind the general public that we have invested in systems for the Department of Social Development and Probation. So both of these departments are going completely digital, and we hope to have both of them completely digitized by mid-year. What this will do, one, it will help to progress and process applications for public assistance. The current process is you have to go to the department, you have to carry out the applications. This new process will allow persons to be able to apply remotely. They can update information. It won't take away the option of going into the office, but it will give a second option to access public services. And that's it for my updates. I invite the media to ask any relevant questions.
Good afternoon. In relation to the cannabis pilot, you have mentioned that prosecutions will not continue for small amounts, right?
Correct.
For the data collected, what has it shown? You said it was insignificant.
Yeah, so what we've identified, to be quite frank, there's very limited and little data. So the pilot was designed, or should have been designed, so that the Royal Anguilla Police Force would be collecting data on the amount of stops that they intercepted, what they took, persons who were prosecuted, were not prosecuted, circumstances, and we don't have much of that data to really make any key data-driven decisions on the way forward. There's very sporadic information that was collected over an entire period of a year.
And the next steps is, are they going to continue with trying to collect data or?
Correct. So they're going to continue to try and collect data over the next year. But as I said, the practice of not prosecuting will. We're also going to be working with the Drug Advisory Committee to determine the way forward in terms of the overall pilot.
The Drug Advisory Committee still comprised of the same persons from before?
Correct. Yes.
Are there going to be any changes into the
Not
role of the
immediately.
committee?
Not immediately. I think what needs to happen as well too is additional support and funding needs to be provided to that agency as well, because right now they don't have a budget to operate. So they can provide advice and technical support, but beyond that, in terms of programming and stuff like that, it's difficult. However, one of the things that we did make good on was a recommendation that was given by that council, essentially, to have another drug counselor on island. So 2026 budget, we made provision for that. So that position is going through the recruitment process.
What about plans to, say, reverse for persons that would have been convicted for marijuana offense, especially those small amounts would have happened in the past? Are there any plans to, say, scrap that off the records and?
So it's and this is not specific just to marijuana. This is an overall look at previous offenses, because we have determined as an administration that it is unfair for persons who have committed offenses many years ago, who since lived great lives, excellent records, but those records still remain are still reflected on their police records. So we will work with some partners in the sector, other lawyers in the sector as well, to be able to come up with some recommendations to make adjustments to legislation that allows some of those what that will look like will come to the general public with.
In relation to the literacy policy, you have mentioned that the literacy and numeracy rates are very low. Maybe struggling for some years.
In some areas,
Yes.
in some specific grades and areas.
Yeah. So, what exactly will the policy look like? How would it identify and target individuals? What would be done differently to what is done now?
Well, it's a couple of things, and I don't want to speak to the policy as yet because the draft has not been circulated to stakeholders. But one of the things that was done is that we looked at how reading is assessed, number one. We looked at the interventions that exist, because what we're realizing is that right now the interventions that exist, lowest level of students who are struggling are targeted, right? But then you have a middle section of students who largely, because they're not extreme, they're kind of falling through the cracks. So you're realizing that later on, you're seeing the gaps widen. So they're not extreme when you test them at the end of kindergarten going into grade 1, but by the time they get to grade 2, 3, and 4, you are seeing the huge gaps. So one, there needs to be a more concerted effort to teach reading, not just to those who have the challenges at the lower end, but just generally and overall, there needs more teaching of reading happening in the classroom outside of just reading teachers. So one is a strategy to support actual teachers who are teaching all the core subjects to teach the subject of reading needs to happen, to support the existing reading teachers in whatever way that we can to strengthen their capacity. Much more training and exposure needs to happen, and identification, earlier identification also needs.
In relation to numeracy, you also mentioned that those levels are also low. Is there plans for a policy for numeracy also?
Yeah, so numeracy is going to be targeted a little bit differently, but that in itself also requires some targeting. We do have a number of numeracy coordinators that have been assigned to various schools across the island, and they work very closely and directly with teachers to enhance and strengthen how numeracy is taught as well. So there's a targeted approach in relation to numeracy.
What about the use of AI in teaching? know, it's a tool now widely used. How is that being implemented into the learning development stage?
Well, as you know, we are actually piloting the OECS harmonized curriculum. So there's a strong AI component to that curriculum as well that helps with lesson setting, helps with specific targeted strategies and initiatives to target students who have various challenges. So through that system, AI is being strongly used as well. But I know teachers generally across the island are utilizing much more AI tools to be able to target students' various deficiencies.
Is this one? Right. Thank you. I'll go next. I have basically two updates. I'll start with an update from the Commerce unit within the Department of Trade, Investment, and Commerce relative to a temporary moratorium on certain business sectors. We've taken a step to ensure better management and balance within several sectors of our economy. For a 1-year period, we have approved a temporary moratorium on the issuance of new business licenses in the following areas: barbershops, bars, beautician and cosmetology services, hairdressers, management consultants operating as sole practitioners, management services firms, real estate businesses, and real estate developers. This does not affect existing businesses in these sectors. Businesses already operating can continue as normal and renew their licenses as usual. This moratorium only applies to new license applications. This temporary moratorium is not focused on stopping business activity in Anguilla. It is to fix a licensing system that is fragmented, inefficient, and difficult for the various departments to properly manage. The current process places a heavy administrative burden on labor, immigration, and inland revenue. It has also created loopholes that allow some individuals to exploit the system and operate outside the law. At the same time, the data shows that some of these sectors are already heavily saturated relative to our population. This temporary moratorium will allow the government to modernize the licensing process and ensure a fair and level playing field for legitimate businesses to operate. From the Department of Water Services, I have another update on that. Over the past few weeks, we have made great progress in preparing for the next phase of Anguilla's water infrastructure improvements. 2 weeks ago, we received the last shipment of the C900 water pipe, and we now have the majority of other material on island that is required to begin the planned rehabilitation works. We are ready to move forward with executing several important aspects of this project. There was a slight delay on our side as it relates to getting ready to submit final documents to the procurement unit, as we wanted to ensure that all necessary coordination was completed regarding inclusion of other utilities. We have been in discussions with the Department of Information Technology and E-Government Services, DITES, about incorporating telecommunication infrastructure for the Jeremiah Gums project because it allows for fiber optic cable to be installed going down to the Blum Point Ferry Terminal building in Blum Point, particularly as ASPA utilizes government systems. It will also create for future opportunities for the installation of CCTV and and the potential to lease underground infrastructure to digital or flow if the need arises. Although flow is already underground in certain locations throughout Anguilla. It is important to note that the provision to include telecommunications won't affect the cost of the project much because it's basically laying pipe in the same trench, the same depth and the same width. So the depth doesn't change, or the width does not change. And this is for both the Little Harbor to Jeremiah Road project and the JW Tractor Road to the Sandy Hill Road project. Meetings are currently being held through the Essential Services Subcommittee to ensure that all utility providers are engaged as we move forward with the upcoming water projects. So as it relates to electricity, it is a matter of Anglic, it's a matter of Maiku having the budget to be able to execute putting the necessary pipes underground simultaneously with the water infrastructure upgrades. I know that for sure to include electricity, that pipe goes lower. It's a deeper trench. It goes lower than the water trench. So that cost will significantly change. But we are having this week the necessary meetings to ensure that Maiku, the Department of Maiku, is prepared to move forward with us, especially on the Jeremiah Gums Highway project. So the Essential Services Committee will do their due diligence to identify whether or not the works for electricity will be included in this upcoming procurement. We are hoping that we get this procurement out and finalized for this Friday. And based on the type of procurement, it should take just about 2 to 3 weeks to select the winners from the various bids being submitted. Our goal is to complete the repairs and upgrades in about 6 months from the project start date. Once these critical sections are addressed, we will move on to other parts of the island where the water network is also in need of addressing. We are very optimistic that by replacing the old leaky pipe and damaged lines with new pipe, and by extending water lines through areas that never previously carried water, we will significantly reduce water losses across the water infrastructure network. The Blown Point area is a very densely populated area, and distributing water to that area through Jeremiah will significantly reduce water leaks that are experienced in Blown Point currently. It also takes the pressure off of the old infrastructure that currently exists through South Hill and flowing in to Blown Point. So although the project going down from Little Harbor to Jeremiah Gums Road into Blown Point intersection, there's currently no water infrastructure there. By putting new pipe into that area, it releases the pressure that is currently on the old lines running through South Hill. So when these two projects are completed, it will significantly reduce the leaks and thus reduce the water loss throughout Anguilla. Those are my two updates. Should I entertain questions now or pass? Yeah?
Afternoon, Mr. Hodge. In relation to the geopolitical issues currently ongoing, volatility in the price of fuel, oil, what plans do we have to ensure that there isn't a sudden increase or possible disruption in supply of fuel to the island?
So the Premier will address the volatility, the issues surrounding fuel, and the cost increases in her update.
Okay.
Yeah.
In relation, I know sometime you've been promising the price, publishing the price of goods in stores, publishing a report from Consumer Affairs Unit. How soon can we expect that?
Yeah, we've been meeting and discussing that for several months now. The unit is a two-man unit, so it's pretty much understaffed. They have been tasked of recent to monitor the prices since the removal of GST in August of 2025. So they have been producing a report for the past few weeks as it relates to the impact that was created since the removal of GST, and that report is now out of the way, and they'll be able to focus solely on mitigating efforts, efforts to educate the consumer, which is the price awareness. So that is next on their agenda. I know tomorrow they will be featured on the Just the Facts program, where they will dive deep into the findings of the removal of GST, what transpired in the various stores. I would have touched on it slightly in an appearance that I made on Just the Facts, but I don't think I would ever do enough justice to it, because these are the people that visited the stores day in and day out. Weekly, they would have gone in, They would have seen some mistakes, some errors as it relates to pricing. They would have had the conversations with the store owners as it relates to what's happening. This should not be reflected in your prices. So they were really consumed in that exercise, and they will be on with Honorable McNeil Rogers tomorrow at 8 o'clock to go deep into those findings and also to speak about the solutions. How are we going to protect consumers? How are we going to create that environment for fair competition to be reflected amongst prices? Because one of the things we don't want to see happening in Anguilla is the collusion of prices, where stores speak to each other, raise prices, and benefit off the backs of the people of
So
Anguilla.
what can we do to stop that?
Well, the first effort is to try the consumer awareness program. I'm not saying, don't misquote me, I'm not saying that is happening right now. There's a potential for it to happen, but I'm not saying it's happening. So we'll start with the consumer awareness, and then we'll see if how that goes.
In relation to water, that the non-revenue water is comprised of leaks and stolen water. How are our efforts to combat the stolen water? How are they progressing?
So we've just made an amendment to the Department of Water Services Act to remove the criminal charging of theft for water. We've made it now a civil charge. What that allows us to do is to fine those, give those who are unauthorized with connections, give them a fine. So that
Not cut you off, but don't you think it's fair for it to be a criminal charge for stealing something?
yeah, there's a long court process that follows, the criminalizing of things. So we are not looking to criminalize our people, arrest people who are stealing water, but more so, make them pay some consequences, make them suffer some consequences for doing that. I'm not a lawyer. The Premier may be able to differentiate between criminal proceedings versus civil proceedings and the length of time it takes to even resolve one single matter. If we can process these situations in a much more efficient way, we may be able to tackle the issue of unauthorized connections faster. Thanks.
First time. Secretary. While the visit. Can you hear me now? You could hear me before. So I have to start over. All right. I would have attended the 50th CARICOM meeting from the 24th to the 27th of February 2026. It was held in St. Kitts under the chairmanship of the Honorable Dr. Terence Drew, Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. It was the first time in 10 years that almost all members were represented, and the U.S. Secretary of State, Mr. Marco Rubio, and other special guests delivered presentations to the body. The Secretary of State noted the U.S. administration's objective of reinvigorating traditional relationships in the Western Hemisphere and observed that there is a long-standing partnership between the U.S. and the CARICOM states in responding to shared challenges. He also pinpointed the threat of transnational criminal organizations and economic advancement as priority issues for further engagement. While the visit by the Secretary of State featured prominently, particularly for the independent countries, a number of agenda items were discussed by the member states on the commitment to work together on matters across the region was reinforced. A detailed communique can be found on the caricom.org website for those persons who may be interested in obtaining more information on the meeting. I wish to take this opportunity to thank Prime Minister Drew, his government, and the people of St. Kitts and Nevis for their warm hospitality. In relation to the global conflict, the war in the Middle East, we are closely monitoring the ongoing geopolitical tensions overseas and their possible implications for Anguilla, particularly through oil prices and imported inflation. International markets have seen sharp volatility in recent days, with crude oil rising to over US $100 a barrel and at points approaching 120 amid concerns about disruption to Middle East supply routes. We know that for a small import-dependent economy like ours, development of that nature can eventually affect transport, electricity, and the wider cost of living. That said, it is important to note that international price movements do not always translate immediately into local prices, as there is typically a lag while shipments and supply contracts work through the system. There are mixed reviews internationally on whether the impact will be short-lived or more prolonged. Some investors appear to be betting on a temporary shock, while some perspectives reflect sustained higher prices ultimately impacting inflation. Our position is to remain calm and monitor the situation carefully and its impact here in Anguilla. We will be assessing any potential implications for Anguilla, and we will be prepared to respond appropriately should sustained external pressures begin to feed through more materially into our local prices. As always, we remain focused on strengthening the resilience of our economy so that Anguilla is better positioned to manage external shocks while protecting the well-being of our people. And I'll just state here as well that I've already been in discussions with both the Permanent Secretary of Finance as well as Customs Department in order to be prepared for the eventuality. In relation to the Anguilla office in the UK, the government continues to advance work on the proposed acquisition of an Anguilla office in the UK. A non-binding offer has now been made on the Fleet Street property, and we are awaiting acceptance of the offer to progress the necessary due diligence, including valuation, legal review, and consideration of the proposed occupancy arrangements to ensure that any acquisition is prudent, properly structured, and represents value for money for the people of Anguilla. Again, this is the offer is non-binding and it's intended to conduct or open the door to conduct due diligence on the property. No final decision has been taken at this stage, but the work is moving forward carefully and deliberately. I travel on Wednesday and return on Monday, and I will be on government business. That's it for me in terms of my updates, and if there are any questions.
Good afternoon, Premier. I've been hearing reports of a possible merger between Sal Petroleum and Delta Anguilla. Is this?
Yes, what we understand, and we've received no official communication. About a week, or a little bit more than a week ago, we have invited one of the players to the table to ascertain what exactly was taking place. And what we've been unofficially informed is that Sunoco, which is the parent company for SAL, would have acquired Delta Petroleum, and that is the case throughout the region. Again, we've seen no official communication, but we are aware of the impact, and so we're looking again at ways in which we can minimize that impact.
And price control measures, I know there's currently price monitoring. How will that continue with just one supplier?
Yeah, that remains. So there will be, we are actually in the process of reviewing the bulk petroleum legislation, and they would provide for the license fees. So very shortly we'll be moving forward with that, but we're comfortable that the licensing regime will not change and will not have a great impact on the people of Anguilla. It will certainly be less than the $750,000 that was in place some years.
I know you've mentioned that authorities are currently monitoring the situation. If there are any disruptions in the supply of fuel, do we have any resolves to back up, sustain us for any time?
Yeah, we're also looking at that aspect. We are aware that the fuel suppliers have fuel storage. We are also aware that Anglec has fuel storage, but we're looking at whether or not we need to increase and how to do.
Then in need at this moment to say lessen household consumption of electricity or anything?
Well, as I indicated, it's going to take a little while for us to feel the effects. We're not sure how. We know that we know that we have shipping concerns that may be on the horizon very shortly. The price of fuel has been, the prices have fluctuated, and especially certainly since last week. And so we're paying careful attention at this point in time. And so if it is that we need to come back to the public and give some indications or suggestions as to what we should be doing within our own spaces, then we'll certainly do so as quickly as possible.
In relation to the Anguilla office building, why was the Fleet Street property chosen to send a non-binding offer to instead of other possible properties that were available?
Yeah, so we looked at over 30 various properties that were on the market at the time. And the offer doesn't necessarily mean we won't continue to look. In fact, I have asked the permanent secretary to ensure that, as things come on the market, that we continue to pay attention to what's happening. That one we've been identified because of the location, the fact that the office space was sufficient to be able to house not only the Anguilla UK rep, but also expansion for our tourism sector. We have no tourism agent currently in the UK. For the domain name, if we have persons there to be able to accommodate our students, a space for gathering in the event we want to have activities while any of us, certainly while Anguilla is hosting functions, etc. And the location. So all of those factors. I mean, there are a number of other properties. They may have been outside of the price range that we're with. They may be in locations where they're behind the building and not easily accessible. They may be too far away from the train stations, and so difficult for people to get there if they're coming in from other parts of the UK. And so that was one of the areas that would have been identified.
You would have mentioned before that they put aside $6 million for possible purchase. What is the list price for this property?
Yeah, I can't recall the list price exactly. I don't recall. But at this point in time, because we've made the offer, we are aware that there are others on the table, etc. It's a moving target at this point in time. I don't want to necessarily put out to the general public what exactly in terms of a figure that we are looking at.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, all. to members of the media, my colleagues, and to the people of Anguilla, I'm pleased to provide today's ministerial update on behalf of the Ministry of Infrastructure, Communications, Utilities, Housing, IT, and e-government services. Now, today's briefing may be too long to be considered brief, but it goes to show that there's a lot taking place within the ministry. Today's update will outline updates from the Department of Infrastructure, Renewable Energy Unit, the Maritime Administration, the Airport Redevelopment Program, Routes 2026, the Anguilla Fire and Rescue Services, the Department of IT and e-government services, the building section within the ministry, the performance of the .ai domain, and Anglic. As it relates to the Department of Infrastructure, we'll begin with roads. The South Hill Road to the Jeremiah Gums Highway, construction of the curbs and sidewalks continue to progress steadily. The project is on track with the estimated completion date for this project remaining at April 2026. The government is currently liaising with Anglic to facilitate the relocation of the final utility pole at the South Hill Junction, which will allow the remaining works at the road's entrance to proceed toward completion. As it pertains to Sandy Hill Road, curb construction continues to progress on schedule. Sidewalk construction has now commenced, and construction is on track, and project completion remains projected for April of 2026. For the Valley Roads, that is the Raphael T. Lake Road and the Albert Lake Drive, as well as the alternate road to Campus Q, the pipes to support the future underground utility installations have been delivered and securely stored. Planning and design work for these projects continue to advance. The Department of Infrastructure is liaising with the utility providers regarding the location and design of the utility infrastructure. Discussions with Anglic are ongoing regarding necessary pole relocations, and the process for land acquisition has begun to support the implementation of these projects. As it relates to the vehicle section, the government of Anguilla continues to implement measures aimed at improving the efficiency, accountability, and sustainability of the government's vehicle fleet. Significant efforts are currently underway to strengthen vehicle management across departments, including the following initiatives. The government is actively reviewing the current fleet to determine which vehicles are now ready for disposal, particularly those that have reached the end of their operational life. Efforts are also being made to reallocate and reassign vehicles across departments in order to ensure that our available resources are utilized more efficiently and aligned with the government's operational needs. Vehicle replacements are ongoing, with additional replacements planned for 2026 to address priority service requirements across all of government's agencies. The government has received notification from Motor World confirming that arrangements are currently being made for the shipping of 4 Royal Anguilla Police Force interceptor or cruiser vehicles. Further notifications are expected regarding the shipment of additional units closer to their scheduled delivery. Steps are also being taken to increase accountability in government vehicle usage through the continued enforcement of the fleet management policy, with further policy reviews planned for 2026. In support of improved oversight, the government aims to implement a vehicle tracking system within the next month. This will allow for enhanced monitoring of vehicle usage, movement, and operational efficiency. Additionally, repairs and maintenance are being carried out on vehicles that still have remaining service life, ensuring that the government continues to maximize the value of its existing fleet assets while maintaining safe, reliable transportation for public service operations. These efforts form part of the government's broader strategy to ensure responsible fleet management, improved operational efficiency, and prudent use of the public resources. As it pertains to the Renewable Energy Unit, 10 Level 2 electric vehicle chargers have successfully arrived on island, and potential installation locations have been identified. Of these potential locations, this includes strategic locations such as our air and sea ports. Planning is underway for a solar canopies charging stations to be implemented to support government's EV fleet. Discussions are ongoing with Professor Orville Jamerson of the Anguilla Community College regarding technical collaboration with our ministry. These conversations are progressing with the Anguilla Community College to establish an EV and hybrid vehicle training program, which is aimed to lead certification opportunities for our locals. Public education materials, including billboards on renewable energy and electric vehicle technology, are currently being designed. The ministry recently delivered a presentation on the Resembit program outputs to Cabinet in collaboration with the Public Utilities Commission, which will soon be progressed to Executive Council. Updates as it relates to the Maritime Administration. The Anguilla Maritime Administration and Shipping Registry continues to advance initiatives aimed at strengthening maritime governance, safety, and regulatory compliance across Anguilla's ports and territorial waters. The administration has initiated the development of a code of safety for ports and maritime facilities, including marinas, along with a maritime management safety system. These frameworks will support the administration in fulfilling its statutory obligations while ensuring safe and efficient operations within Anguilla's waters. During the week of 16th February 2026, the administration conducted stakeholder consultations on the initial draft frameworks with key maritime stakeholders in order to ensure that the systems are practical, effective, and responsive to the operational realities of the sector. The administration also participated in a tabletop exercise focusing on strengthening sanctions and compliance capacity, a critical area of concern within international maritime regulatory environment. This exercise contributes to enhancing Anguilla's ability to identify, monitor, and manage sanctions-related risk in maritime operations and shipping registry activities. The update on the airport development. The current project completion date, based on the schedule provided by the contractor, is 18th June 2026. Current project completion status is 93% completion of the overall project. Approximately 35% of the Phase 2 works have been completed. Overall, the project continues to be on track, on schedule, and there remains even the possibility that works could conclude earlier than the current projected completion date, as the contractor continues to accelerate apron construction activities. Phase 2I, which relates to the demolition of the existing terminal building, this is 100% complete, with all infrastructure from the former terminal building now being removed. Remaining works within this area are now incorporated under the apron development activities. Apron expansion. The apron expansion is approximately 20% complete. Key construction activities include the paving of the apron, which is about 20% complete, the subgrade preparation, grading, compaction, and testing, which is now 100% complete, with the entire apron area now fully prepared, the granular base, coarse base placement and compaction, which is approximately 85% complete, the lean concrete base, which has 11 lanes poured, representing 187 panels. This represents approximately 50% completion of this part of the project. For the Portland cement concrete apron, we have 6 lanes poured, representing around 102 panels, representing overall completion of 27%. Anglec is currently on site and has completed the underground cable pulling to replace the existing overhead power lines leading to the combined services building. Once the overhead lines are removed, ACON will be able to begin the construction of the new security restricted area access road. Phase 2K, which speaks to the airport exit road construction, is approximately 35% complete. Roots Americas 2026. Last week, Anguilla was represented at Roots Americas 2026, which was held in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Roots Americas is the region's premier aviation conference, bringing together airlines, airports, tourism authorities, and aviation stakeholders to discuss air connectivity and future growth across the Americas. Anguilla was represented by a high-level delegation that included myself, Minister Connor, the Director of Tourism, senior ministry officials, airport management, as well as the project managers for the airport, Avia NG, who attended to assist in representing Anguilla at their own cost. Our participation formed part of the government's ongoing strategy to strengthen air access and position Anguilla for the next phase of aviation development. During the conference, the delegation held strategic engagements with several major international as well as regional airlines, including American Airlines, Delta Airlines, JetBlue Airways, Bermudair, Slate Aviation, and Porter Airlines, among others. These meetings formed part of our continued efforts to maintain dialogue with key airline partners and to ensure that Anguilla remains viable and competitive within the global and regional aviation marketplace. In addition to the airline engagements, the delegation met with tourism authorities from the United States Virgin Islands, St. Kitts and Nevis, and the Turks and Caicos Islands, as well as representatives from the Baltimore-Washington International Airport, where we know that we now get direct flights via Bermudair. These discussions focused on regional collaboration, inter-Caribbean connectivity, and the importance of coordinated approaches to airlift and tourism development. I'm also pleased to note that Minister Connor would have participated in a panel discussion on regional airlift, contributing to the important regional dialogue on improving air access and strengthening connectivity across the Caribbean. And I must say, thank you to Minister Connor because Anguilla was very, very well represented. The overall feedback from Roots Americas 2026 was very encouraging. There is strong interest in Anguilla and clear recognition of the progress being made in modernizing our airport infrastructure, including the runway expansion. These developments are widely viewed as critical to supporting future growth within Anguilla's air connectivity. While follow-up work will continue over the coming months, we can confidently say that Anguilla's participation in Roots 2026 was a resounding success. The conference allowed us to strengthen key stakeholder relationships, elevate Anguilla's profile within the aviation industry, and clearly communicate that Anguilla's aviation sector is progressing and preparing for future opportunities. The update for the Anguilla Fire and Rescue Services. Upgrades are being made at the current facility as installation of the new air conditioning system at the building continues to progress. Installation on the 3rd floor has been completed. Contractors are currently working on the upgrades on the 2nd floor. As it relates to the incident responses, and this is as of 19th February, domestic incidents, they would have responded to 25 incidents, and they would have also responded to 4 incidents at the aerodrome, with the service providing standby coverage for a King Air aircraft on 19th February. In terms of maritime searches and rescues, the Anguilla Fire and Rescue Services would have responded to 4 calls for action. The Department of IT and E-Government Services. The department continues to advance major initiatives aimed at strengthening government's digital infrastructure, internal communications, and cybersecurity capacity. Network infrastructure upgrades have been completed at the Regional Law Revision Office, as well as Radio Anguilla's new office. These upgrades significantly improve connectivity, reliability, and network security. Our cybersecurity has undergone some enhancement with the introduction of a new privileged access management system known as PAM 360. The PAM 360 system has been implemented to control and monitor vendor access, enforce multi-factor authentication, provide audit logs and session recording, and strengthen government's overall cybersecurity governance. An internal communications platform known as SnapComms is in its pilot phase. Testing is underway for a government-wide internal communications platform designed to deliver high-visibility alerts and notifications, improve emergency communications, support staff engagement and surveys, strengthen cybersecurity awareness messaging, and a full rollout will follow once a successful completion of the pilot phase has been realized. A summary of the ongoing building projects within the building section at MICU. Ongoing projects. The retrofit of the 5-Mar building for office accommodation is expected, well, it's largely completed as at the end of February 2026. The project is completed based on the current scope of works. The only outstanding item includes upgrading the existing fire alarm system within the building. Radio Anguilla is now operating from within the new facility. Additionally, spaces for the Departments of Education as well as Statistics are also completed and ready for the relocation of staff. However, the MICU team is currently assisting the Department of Education with the procurement of office furniture or cubicles for addition or implementation within the space. The revised timeline for the Department of Education is dependent on receiving the furniture. The revised timeline for the Department of Statistics is at the department's discretion for when they're ready for the relocation of their staff. His Majesty's Prison. The construction of the workshop is still on track and estimated for a completion of April 2026. The project is progressing with the foundations already being poured and electrical infrastructure being installed. The pouring of the ground floor slab is also scheduled to take place during this week. Overall, the project is on track to finish close to the projected timeline. The Royal Anguilla Police Force construction of their office spaces. This is expected to be completed in March of 2026. The project is progressing quite well, with a major milestone of the casting of the roof completed almost 2 weeks ago. The remaining work includes finishing and includes the finishes, which is the plastering and painting of the walls, the tiling of the floors, and the installation of the suspended ceilings, and the completion of the electrical systems upgrades. During the execution of the project, the Royal Anguilla Police Force requested some additional works to improve the building's operations. Some of this work has already been incorporated. However, the scope or cost of the remaining works is currently being assessed to determine the overall cost and time implications on the project if included. The Albina Lake Hodge Comprehensive School Technical Block is expected to be completed in August of 2026. The project is progressing, with major work being done on the superstructure of the agriculture and technical blocks. Project meetings are held monthly with the Department of Education, the contractor, and other stakeholders to monitor the project's overall progress. As of the 5th of March, the overall project completion is at around 45%, with a targeted completion date, once again, of August 2026. One of the major factors affecting the project has been several design changes, which has affected the project coordination. This issue is currently being addressed by the project team. Construction of the office extension to the Department of Water Services is expected to be completed in August of 2026. The renovation for the office of the Department of Water Services has commenced following the completion of the pre-construction activities, which included the relocation of all staff from the building. Work to accommodate some of the staff in adjacent storage building has been completed, and the customer service staff has been relocated to Michael's office temporarily. The first project meeting with the general contractor and stakeholders will be scheduled for the end of March. Milestones to date include the casting of the foundations of the storage building and the removal of the existing roof of the office building. The combined services building. The replacement of the HVAC system is expected to be completed in March of 2026. This project is ongoing and should be completed as per the scheduled timeline. Lansam Bowl Cultural Center. The retrofit of office space for the festival's office. This has an estimated completion date of March 2026. This project is ongoing and should be completed as per the scheduled timeline. However, substantial completion should be achieved within the next 2 weeks, which will enable the commencement of the office to be set up by the staff. The morgue extension at the Princess Alexandra Hospital. The completion date is yet to be determined. The tender has been issued for the project, and the bid return date is slated for 2nd April 2026. We'll have a better idea as to the project completion date once we receive the bids on April 2nd. Tenders to be issued later in 2026. Construction of the concrete roof extension at Maiku. The tentative date is April 2026. Construction of the Zenita Haven residential facility is slated for the 4th quarter 2026. Department of Natural Resources, the construction of the abattoir. The completion date is yet to be determined. And as it relates to sports developments that are upcoming, we have the upgrades to the Players Pavilion, Blowing Point Basketball Facility, A-Elite Sports Hub, and the National Track, all of which at this time are to be determined. .ai performance. So far for the year, we have received payments for the month of December, January, as well as the payment for February having been filed, with the payment for February expected to be paid and received by the government of Anguilla within the coming days. I am happy to report that there has continued to be strong performance and growth, with us seeing new record performance to date. The payment received for December was $19.8 million. $19.8 million EC. And I would like to, just for the sake of perspective, remind the listening public that the average figures that were received per month for January to December 2025 was around $20 million per month. The slight decrease in 19.8 as opposed to slightly above 20 is due to the holidays that were taking place in December and the shutting down of multiple services across registrars. It is common to see that slight decrease in the holiday season. The payment that was received for January of 2026 is $25.5 million. The filing that was made for February of 2026, which government is expected to receive in the coming days, is a record of $32.8 million, with $23 million of this projected figure coming in from new registrations. For context, the $32.8 million received in February of 26 is compared to $17 million that was collected in February of 2025, almost double the performance. This shows continued growth in performance of our .ai domain as we continue to collaborate and engage on growth strategies with our manager, Identity Digital. One of such strategies is the ongoing planning of the first registrar conference, which is due to take place here in Anguilla in the coming weeks. This conference will bring together the top registrars that are responsible for selling the .ai domains to increase not only exposure to Anguilla, to familiarize them with Anguilla's story, but to collaborate closely with the government of Anguilla in creating more and more strategies for boosting and continuing to grow this performance and improving our relationships. As it relates to Anglic, on March 24th, the edition of Just the Facts will feature myself as well as Mr. David Carty, as we are hosted by the Honorable Evans McNeil Rogers, where we will give comprehensive updates and delve into all matters Anglic. I invite persons to tune in, as well as to reach out with any particular questions they may have and wish to see answered. I have been informed by the CEO that the board has received a final recommendation from the selection panel and have decided to move forward with the recommendation and are currently engaging the individual who was recommended. To date, a contract has yet to be signed. I would like to remind the general public of the process that takes place for the selection. As you know, in December, Anglic would have put out, at the end of the term of the contract for the former CEO, Anglic would have put out an invitation for persons to apply for the position of CEO. Following that, they would have reviewed over 80 applications that they would have received for the position, ultimately shortlisting 5 persons, which was then further narrowed down to the final 3 candidates. Of the final candidates evaluated, which I'm told was quite close, the panel made a recommendation to the board of Anglic as to who they thought was the best candidate from what was presented. The CDB terms of reference were sent to Anglic following their board approval on January 14th. The terms would have been received by Anglic on February 4th, 2026. This would have began a 60-day period by which Anglic and the CDB would negotiate and collaborate on the terms and moving forward with the signing of the contract. So the signing is due to take place by April 4th of 2026, but I am happy to report that conversations are aggressively taking place, and we look forward to having these conversations concluded within the next 2 weeks, well ahead of the allocated time. By March 24th, we will be in a much better position to provide concrete updates on both of these topics, but I would like to reassure the general public that we are paying attention to the global geopolitical landscape and discussing mitigation methods should we experience the shocks from these external events. However, I would like to assure the public that at this time, There is no anticipation of increases to electricity bills in the short order. In closing, I wish to reaffirm the government's commitment to delivering modern, reliable, and resilient infrastructure for the people of Anguilla. I extend sincere appreciation to my permanent secretary, principal assistant secretaries, senior leaders within the ministry, our technical teams, contractors, partner agencies, and all stakeholders for their continued dedication and collaboration in advancing these national priorities. Thank you, and I now welcome any questions from the media.
Good afternoon, Mr.
Good afternoon.
You have mentioned about plans for the Albert Lake Drive and Raphael Road, the Valley Roads. What is the estimated cost for these to be redeveloped?
I would have to refer to the budget. I know that they were explicitly listed in the budget, but I don't have the costing at hand. What I can ballpark to say, based on what was budgeted, the Raphael T. Lake, I believe, is around 6 million, with the Albert Lake Drive probably being around 3 million. But again, those numbers are located in the budget and they are available for public record. And so I don't want to misquote as I don't have them at hand right now.
And how soon can we see plans completed and the road actually done?
In terms of plans being completed, we're hoping to have all plans completed within the next 2 weeks. The final discussions are taking place with utilities. And the only thing that may extend that deadline is we're currently also having the conversations with Anglic to see if while we are doing these works and we're improving the water infrastructure, if we can also collaborate to have the moving of the electricity infrastructure underground. But as per the plan, we're hoping to see progress begin by April of 2026 on the Raphael T.
You have mentioned that 10 EV charging stations are now on island.
Yes.
Yes. How much electric vehicles are there on island to have such a large amount of charging stations at the time?
Are we including both? We're talking about the public fleet, or are we talking both public and private? Because some of these chargers will be intended for public use as well. And with the recent promotions on electric and hybrid vehicles, we have seen a growing adoption within the private use on island in EV and hybrid vehicles. In terms of giving you a concrete number as to how many are currently actively in use, I would not be able to provide that at this time. And if you'd like me to find out specifically how much we have within government's fleet, I know for the initial AREP program, they had two. An additional 5 were then ordered, and I believe we may have an additional 5 on the way. That would bring the total in government's fleet to around 12.
And we've seen a number of other new government vehicles on the road. Why won't they add electric vehicles? Why won't they consider to be electric vehicles since that's the plan going forward?
Well, there was a lot of the new vehicles that you're seeing right now are actually as a result of the orders that were previously made. So take, for example, the police cars that we're now seeing only now preparing to be shipped to Ireland. That was something that was ordered in late 2024. So there have been delays in providing some of the vehicles. But there's also the ongoing management of the EV fleet pilot. So government has been tracking the data for the electric vehicles that have been used and ensuring the viability, as well as liaising with the Anguilla Fire and Rescue Services to have mitigation plans for what were to happen if one of these EVs were to get involved in accidents. Do we have the proper equipment and training? And how do we ultimately end up with disposal? So it's an active plan as we transition there, but it's a work in progress.
In relation to ANLEC, you say a more comprehensive update will be Just Effects program in a couple of weeks. But it's been widely reported that an individual has been selected as the new CEO. Meaning that the former CEO, Sutler Fudge, is now out. This has caused some disgruntled in public domain. They wanted to see Sutcliffe lead the way towards renewable energy. He would have helped instrument formulating the plan forward, getting the going and whatnot. They're asking on calling on you to do something to make sure he becomes the CEO again. What can you say about that?
Well, what I can say about that is, first and foremost, Anglec is a private company that has its own bylaws. The fact that the company would have put out a request for applications, which is the normal course of action when recruiting for that position, and would have received upwards of 80 applications regionally, to have me step in and say, well, forget the process, forget the 80 applications, forget the selection panel, and just appoint Mr. Hodge, because this is what the public is calling for. First of all, that is beyond my remit as minister, and it would be a gross overstepping of my ministerial responsibility. As you know, the board manages the day-to-day responsibilities of Anglic. I select the board. When Mr. Hodge was returned as CEO, that was not a decision that was made by myself. It was made by the board. The board would have made a decision to follow the process. And coming out of the recommendation from the selection panel, this individual would have been the top contender. Again, I was told that in the final selections, the contenders were quite close. But at this time, the company has decided to move forward with the recommendation of the selection panel. This, until a contract is actually signed, does not yet mean that that individual will become the next CEO. So say, for example, if that individual in talks with Anglic decides for whatever reasons they have another opportunity or they would not like to relocate, it is then on the company to go back to the recommendations, go back to the process and see who was the second person in line and then reach out to that individual. So essentially we have the score sheet and they're going down from the person who was identified as the best candidate and coming down. Now, from my personal standpoint, would I have loved to see this led by the CEO position given to an Anguillian? That would have been my personal preference, yes. But for me, at this time, after the process has gone on this far, to step in and say, forget your entire process, this is who I want you to put, I don't see that that would be something that should be welcome or warranted by the people of Anguilla. Because in this case, yes, a lot of persons may want to see Mr. Hodge. But what if it was alternatively Mr. Hodge was recommended and then I as minister stepped in to go against whatever the board decided? Ultimately, Anglic is a private company. They have an established process and the process has been followed and this is where we are. And I have no place in that process in terms of determining who is ultimately selected to be the CEO of Anglic. But I do at this time want to recognize and thank Mr. Sutcliffe Hodge for all of his efforts thus far, his close collaboration with me, and I will still call upon him for his expertise, and I'm sure he will be engaged with whoever is successful for this project if someone is other than himself is signed on, because all of us are ultimately committed to realizing the renewable energy transition for the people of Anguilla. And as we pay attention to the geopolitical landscape and what's taking place in rising oil prices, we realize that it is more critical than ever that we aggressively push towards making this a reality for the people of Anguilla.
In relation to the selection panel, can you share with us who were the persons on this panel?
Yes, I don't have the names of all of the persons offhand, but what I can say is the panel was an independent panel. It was chaired by by Bishop Damian Hughes. He was the chairperson of the selection panel. And of the remaining persons who comprised the panel, there were both Anguillians as well as persons from within the region who have expertise within the renewable energy sector and all of the technical requirements. And so they would have met independent to Anglic, independent to the ministry, reviewed all of the applications and come up with their recommendation, which was then forwarded to the board and subsequently approved, or adopted, I should say.
In Suriname, in a few weeks, there'll be the inaugural Caribbean Energy Week. Will Anguilla be attending?
At this time, I am not aware of Anguilla having any representation, at least within my ministry, but I can review the conference, weigh the pros and cons, and then perhaps that's a conversation to see if we should have, based on our intended outcomes, if it's worth sending someone from our renewable energy unit, perhaps our director of renewable energy or director of public utilities. Thank you for your questions. And now I'll turn over to Minister Connor for his update.
Thank you, Minister Joseph Vanderpool. I will start with the health protection, and of course with my two colleagues to my left, they will elaborate more on some sports, and Minister Rogers, or former Minister Rogers, will talk more about health. In fact, I just came from a meeting with the Deputy Commissioner of Police, deal with some of the issues faced with the strong winds and the amount of garbage or litter that covers most of our island. What's going to happen or it is currently happening, is that there are removals of defective community waste bins. I think throughout the island, the contractors will be moving throughout the communities, removing damaged, broken, or bins without covers, which contributes to waste spilling on the ground, attraction of rodents, stray animals, and pests. The wind-blown litter along a roadside and surrounding communities is an increased health and environmental concern. The replacement of the proper waste receptacles, this is to install durable bins with secure covers to prevent wind-blown litter and scavenging by animals. There's also a multi-agency cooperation to be set up to address a number of these issues. And also we look to have the vehicles that are transporting uncovered waste causing wind-blown litter on roadsides. I mean, again, the police will be asked to intervene with that. Illegal dumping in public areas is also causing a bit of a concern. Beach litter and beach littering, again, is another area of concern. The misuse or improper use of community waste bins, and again, that comes down to what is actually thrown in the bins as well. And I would say also the amount of litter surrounding those bins. We look to promote bulky waste and derelict vehicle program to mitigate illegal dumping around the communities, and also strengthening public awareness and enforcement, and of course getting the community participation. At this point, I also want to point out that the Anguilla Enhancement Program have done a terrific job with the jollifications, and a number of people within communities have played an active role in trying to keep their community clean. I think that it is vitally important that we all pay much more attention to what is going on there. I'll switch to the Ministry of Tourism. And again, I'll start with, there's a program that's in place or will be installed pretty soon of honoring the boat legends. And the Ministry of Health, Tourism and Sports, from our tourism unit, we are currently undertaking an initiative to identify some boat captains, especially out of the Blowing Point area. I think for a number of years, the boat captains and boat owners who would have transported Anguillians or tourists to and from the port of Blowing Point, I think the fact is that we'd like to install a plaque with their names recognizing their contribution to that industry. The George Washington University, there is a tourism youth policy research that will start from the 18th to the 25th of March. There's 4 postgraduate students from George Washington University who will be on island conducting groundwork and research in support of the development of the National Tourism Youth Policy. During this period, they will be engaging in various focus groups and meetings with the industry partners from both public and the private sector. I too was away from Anguilla from the 21st to the 24th of February. I was in Bermuda. There too was a CTOA Connectivity Summit. I was also a panelist at that program, and also as a member of the CTO Constitutional Committee, making presentations on how we're going to go forward, especially with a number of the members who, again, are falling behind on their payments. My colleague, Joseph Vanderpool, would have mentioned quite a lot about our visit to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. I think that was, as he said, was very successful. It gave us an opportunity to sit with a number of agencies at that venue where, again, Anguilla it is vitally important for us to always have our stake at the table. And the CTO would have asked me to be part of a panel, and part of that panel, it was about improving intra-Caribbean air travel. So some of the points that were raised there was the reality for smaller islands, and of course, Anguilla is very much in that small island bracket. And one of our challenges, obviously, is being the furthest north. I think for us to get south on most trips, whether St. Lucia, Grenada, Trinidad, Guyana, we seem to have to go further north to Miami to get further south. And this another part was the need for stronger airline destination collaboration. I think that is something we often talk about whenever we have these meetings with the CTO, because one of the main factors of moving from island to island is about the cost and of course, whether or not they've got the airline capacity to make it happen. Regional partnerships, I think that again is something we often talk about, but we'll continue to look for the answers until that role is completed. And climate and seasonal resilience, there's no doubt about it, is that we are in the Caribbean concerned every year about the hurricane season. What is important for us is to do the best we can, especially if you can't avoid it. You do your best to protect yourself from it. And the positive at the end, obviously, is to look for the opportunities ahead. Of course, we could talk about what's happening in the Middle East. We know that Sharjah, the Emirates, that is a great destination for a number of Europeans, even Americans. But wherever there is uncertainty of war or uprising, it's always a problem. So for us in the Caribbean, we pride ourselves as peaceful, but sometimes it's not up to us to determine who keeps the peace. I think that is something that is vitally important. Just a quick switch to cricket. I know my colleague, Jason Bryan, will elaborate a little bit more on sports, but Haresh Raghunath, he is a venue and facilities manager who works with Cricket West Indies. He was on Ireland to have a look to see what our facilities look like and make recommendations as we look to do some work at the park to upgrade the facilities there. And again, it's not just about upgrading it to a standard that we can probably host some regional cricket. And again, you don't need to have a huge stadium, but you need some, of course, the basics to make sure that you're in a position to do that. Moon Splash, again, 2026. Might have been a bit of a sad note with the fact that Cat Core, who was probably been to every Moon Splash, he was there in spirit, but again, not in person. And I know the Honorable Evans McNeil Rogers would have attended the ceremony for him in Jamaica on behalf of the government of Anguilla. And so no doubt Mr. Rogers will talk a little bit more about that. But as I said, 36 years, and again, it was very successful. And again, happy to say that the Anguilla Tourist Board and the government of Anguilla sees the importance of supporting that event, and we're very happy to do so. I too am available for questions that you may have.
Good afternoon, Mr. Khanna. In terms of cricket for Webster's Park, how far along are we? You know, you said that they're preparing for some work there right now. A consultant was in the integrating the Anglo Cricket Association, the Wood Islands Cricket. Are all of the bodies unified as one in determining what exactly would happen?
Yes, I think, again, the reason why Mr. Raghunath was here is because you could assume that what you're doing is right. But as he would have mentioned, that a number of facilities throughout the Caribbean, that they're not fit for purpose going forward. So we might have been later in starting, but again, we're in a better position to actually get it right. And we intend to do it in stages, obviously. So, but the key is getting the Players Pavilion up and running. And of course, there's a lot of work to be done regarding the outfield and the pitch. For whatever reason, we've been blessed with what is this salt or the clay, whatever the salt and water, whatever it has worked well for us over the years. So those are some of the basics. What is vital important for us, and again, working with Jason Bryan, Honorable Jason Bryan, and the Cricket Association, the sports office, is to make sure that we get the youth programs in place. Whatever we build in Anguilla, it is not about we're building it for others to run on it or play on it, but for us to be part of it, for our youngsters to be part of that. And that is the intention. And of course, by having Raghunath here, he represents West Indies cricket. And I think that we will not have international cricket or regional cricket without the say-so of West Indies cricket.
In relation to tourism, how is the season looking so far?
The season looking fantastic. You know, I think what is great in many ways is, again, speaking with industry partners, they're saying not just this season, it will be more successful longer into this season than ever before. The numbers, again, from November, January, February, March, very, very impressive. And again, a number of persons that I've actually met on a couple of the flights back in, and we always do surveys. First, we look around to see how many Anguillians are on the flight. Our first flight from Miami, there was about 6 Anguillians on it, and 3 of those were from our team. And on the last flight that came in on Saturday, again out of Miami, there are only 4, and three of that were members who went to Rio. So I often ask the question, is this your first time? I've got a mixture. There are a number who say, yes, I've been coming 20, 30 years. And then there are those, a number, the majority of it's their first time. And that is a great indicator. So I know that there were some challenges before, but I'm so proud to say that the work that the Anguilla Tourist Board, the work that our private sector, the work that, when I say the private sector, it's not just the hotel or villa owners, but the people who man it. The fact is that they are the true champions in all of this, because without proper service and the right attitude, people would not come back.
Over the last couple of years, there have been strides to have the tourist season year-round. I know Aurora opens year-round. Are we continuing with that push?
We have to, really, we have to, and that is the objective. It's the tourist season should not be about 6 months. No other island. What concerns me is that people feel that Anguilla shuts down. You know, there's still hotels and villas available on Anguilla. The major hotels, majority of them shut down. I know last year Aurora didn't shut down. What really would also help is that, and we've seen a lot of success with Bermuda Air and the direct flights coming out of Boston, Newark, and Baltimore. One of the questions that is often asked about Anguilla, the first question is where is it? And the second is, how do you get there? And if persons wants to come for 4 or 5 days, they don't want to spend the best part of 14, 16 hours in transit. So, and again, with us going down to Rio, we're looking at other airlines to see how the South American market, when it comes to our Central American market, how they, in their winter season, that Anguilla is an alternative for them. And currently, we've got the director and deputy director in England. So again, throughout Europe, we have to look to get more and more personnel or visitors out of those areas. We have in the past. It's just that over the previous 5 years, for whatever reason, that was abandoned. And what we do know that Europeans have very long holidays. And again, if these are the ones, they will not just come for a quick trip. They will come for about a minimum of 10 days. So we'll continue to be pushing for that.
Yeah. So the tourist season is surrounded around the winter months.
Right.
Europe and America freezing. Tourists come here to get away from the cold. The summertime, though, there isn't that need to get away from the cold. So what is there here to encourage persons, before they were planning a scene, probably entertain clubs, but that it continues? Like, are there plans to develop the industries, diversify the type of tourists you could
Right.
have coming here?
So again, I think what is important is Anguilla can be everything to everybody. And there is something about if Anguilla remains at the very high standard it's at, and it's not necessarily about the highest prices in the Caribbean, but that persons feel they can come to Anguilla and feel whether it's in the middle of summer. There are more people who've got holidays in the summer and would prefer to come to the Caribbean, you know. So it's not, I think in the winter, of course, the prices are high, and majority of the persons who come to the Caribbean, or as you see to Anguilla, the average age is over a certain age because they're mainly retired or they've earned enough money. But we still want to attract the younger crowd, the younger generation. And to your question is, what are they looking for? So these are things that we have to continue to research. But again, as I said, it's not about mass. It's about making sure that the quality remains. What is also very important in all of this is that, again, as we move forward, it's important that the people of Anguilla understands that we as a government will do what it takes. And the big question too, you talk about extension on the runway, that would be a big changer. There are a number of persons, whether out of Chicago, whether it's out of Toronto, Canada, I know there's a lot of requests for that. And so, and we would rather persons come direct to us. St. Martin has been a great partner with us over the years. But if you consider that the majority of our guests that comes to Anguilla, they fly first class or business class, and the tickets prices are higher, so the taxation is higher. We'd rather they come directly to us and invest those taxes into our infrastructure. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to the media and to the listeners that tune in. I would like to start by extending congratulations to the participants of the Ashley and Brooks road race that took place yesterday. And also to inform the public that tomorrow is a marathon, and it starts at 6 a.m. at the Anguilla Great House. This is in partnership with the Department of Sports and the Anguilla Tourist Board. It comprises of 25 runners from different countries. In terms of the Department of Youth and Culture, I'm happy to inform the general public that the youth employability programs have started. So youth exposure program started in February, and the job link up program started this month of March. The Angola National Youth Council and the National Youth Ambassador Corps have elected their new executives, and they continue to urge the youth organizations and the community members to support and collaborate with them. People that are interested in terms of youth that are interested in leadership and being part of one organization in terms of advocating for youth, youth inclusion, youth development in general on island. I urge you to visit the Department of Youth and Culture to gain more information on how you can contribute or collaborate with the organizations. The new committee for the National Youth Week has been established, and they are already working on the plans to be executed for the National Youth Week of 2026. In terms of the community centers, we are moving forward swiftly with a new approach with the community centers and its operation now under the Community Service Planners Unit, with a more community-focused program development based on the interest of each community. The current and operational centers are the West End Community Development Center, the Blowing Point Community Center, Herschel Gums Community Development Center, Hope Community Center, which is located in East End, and Island Harbor Community Center that was officially added this year. I would also like to announce to the public that we will have a meeting with the community of District 1 to get the community's feedback on the proposed development for the school and the surrounded areas in relation to sport and recreation, in terms of for the school and the community in general. This meeting will take place on Thursday, March 12th, 2026 at the Vivian Vanderbilt Primary School. And invitation is extended to all residents of District 1 to come out and share their views on the proposed approach in terms of sports development in that area. And that will be most of my my updates for today. Open to
Good afternoon. How much are the at-risk youth targeted to get into the after-school programs at the centers?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
The at-risk youth, how are they targeted to have them put into the community for all hours of the night? Little children walking all about in the evenings, very idle. How are they targeted to place in the community centers to do their after homework, after school activities, extracurricular activities? How are they targeted?
That's an amazing question. And I'm happy to let you know that based on this approach that we're working, which is way focused on community centered, that's the initial part of it in terms of youth. So under the community planners unit, this is something that's being assessed, and how we can ensure that the youth are taking part into the community centers and that their needs are being addressed through the community center. So this is a work in progress because we're currently making a switch from the Department of Youth and Culture that was leading the community centers, and now it's being led by the community planners unit. And she's preparing the plan of assessment, and this will be shared with us, I believe, is this week on the way forward. And then we will continue to inform how everything will be done step by step and the different areas that will be addressed through this new approach.
Good afternoon to the listening and viewing public. Updates with respect to healthcare. I must place on record that I continued satisfaction the way that things have been progressing recently in terms of actively addressing the human resources issues, healthcare. Know that there are a number of interviews that are taking place at the moment. Fill positions that were vacant quite some time, still having issues in terms of, would imagine, salaries, level of salaries, compensation for our healthcare workers. We anxiously await the report from PwC and the Public Service Sector Review. What there have been interviews in terms of vacancies this in the lab, the pharmacy, nursing, paramedics, EMTs, OBGYN, pediatrics, number of other areas in healthcare. Have maintenance team, maintenance department, have housekeeping and auxiliary staff actively working to make sure that all of these vacancies are filled with personnel. Of course, in healthcare, must be able to have the requisite personnel adequately trained in place in order to move forward. Doesn't matter how much we progress with .ai, there is an important element for .ai and telemedicine and so on. You have to have human bodies and personnel in place. Yes, they can be reduced, but you have to have bodies in place. So we are working diligently to be able to fill those positions. We are hoping that with the salary review, that we will attract type of healthcare professionals that will enable us to improve the quality of healthcare systems. Well, we're still working with the Anguilla Community College in terms of implementing soft skill training program. Because as you would imagine, it doesn't matter how good
medical services are, that customer service relation is also very, very important. How you deal with internal customers, the patients and their families, paramount importance. Every single healthcare worker, we are going to make sure that they're adequately trained in dealing with them. At times, especially if you're stressed out and short-staffed, you can snap. You're a human being. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we all same page, using the same standard operating procedures, dealing with your external customers, internal customers, your patients and their families, so on. It will make a big difference, not only in the perception, but also in reality in the healthcare industry. We are moving along in terms of equipment. You all would have, I would have indicated here on a number of occasions the equipment that we would have purchased. I'm pleased to say that 75 to 80% of the equipment that I spoke about from time to time are actually on island. I was hoping that by now we would have seen the clips that were taken. I believe it was last week Thursday from the government's public relations office. They were at the new operating theater that we are retrofitting. They would have had clips and interviews pertaining to the new equipment that was there. I'm hopeful that it can be put out there sooner rather than later. I see Mr. Hodges here. He was present at that session as well. Equipment, of course, for that OR theater, the operating room theater, we are retrofitting that so that we'll be able to do joint replacements. There you go. Joint replacement here at some point in time. Had some delays, so I would say later on in the year we would be able to commission such operations here in Anguilla. We would have had a number of engineers who would have done a lot of work in Cayman Islands. They were here on the ground last week. Fortunately, we didn't get all of the equipment in at that particular point in time because there were some delays in Miami. The container was there. Of course, I believe Customs, U.S. Customs, there. I'm pleased to say that the rest of that shipment would have arrived and is in Road Bay down in Sandy Ground with Tropical. We're looking forward to having those engineers come back, help us install equipment. We're looking at setting up laminar flow in the operating theater. Would have had an orthopedic laparoscopic tower, C-arm, new anesthesia machines, and a number of other bits and pieces of equipment that the orthopedic specialists want to use during those operations. The other usage of that particular operating theater is we want to establish ophthalmology. You would be aware that folks removing cataracts and other operations with respect to ophthalmology have to go to St. Martin. They do go to St. Martin right now. We're trying to bring all of that in home with this theater that we're preparing as well. We'll also be looking at having a orthopedic surgeon on staff, not only to deal with the patients who would have joint replacement, but also follow-up treatment. Of course, this year, we are hoping that it doesn't repeat again the first 2 months of this year. The amount of medical evacuations that we had to support from a government standpoint in sending patients overseas for orthopedic surgeries and so on and so forth, we'll be able to bring and expand the whole orthopedic surgery to a different level, try and make sure that we are a center of excellence, not only with visiting orthopedic surgeons, but also operations that are done here, follow up patients. Because there are a number of Anguillians, male, female, young, and the elderly, that are having serious issues joints, one reason or another, want to take care of that. As I mentioned earlier, that we are in the process of interviewing a number of other specialties going forward. The Department of Health Services, working in close collaboration with public admin, we are looking to assign some HR representatives so that they could deal with the issues in terms of vacancies, in terms of interviews, in terms of addressing the human resource capacity over at the hospital or the Department of Health Services going forward. We're also looking at the Medical and Health Professionals Act. I was informed that the draft and the regs should be available at the end of this month. It is critical because there are a number of healthcare professionals who want to work in Anguilla, on a specialist basis to come in, visiting specialists come in. So we've got to accommodate and we've got to upgrade and modernize the process that we have in terms of registration. It is what we have now is old, it's archaic, way past its time. We're working on that, and hopefully we'll have those regs and the draft legislation ready by the end of this month. We'll take it to public consultation, work on it so that we could take it to the House of Assembly, really move forward. We're the home of .ai. We're going, not even be able to go online and register. So we're moving forward with that. We're hoping that sometime during this year, we'll be able to make amendments to the Procurement Act so that we will be able to have it much more effective and efficient in terms of essential services, not having to go through some of the what I call cobweb and red tape that is there at present, not to diminish the importance of it, but to be able to have that piece of legislation respond much more quickly to the needs, especially healthcare and other essential services like water and electricity and so on and so forth. Those are some of the things that we are dealing with. Again, we would like to place on record my profound thank you, appreciation to the Sharps family, Gary and Connie Sharp. They are the owners of Healthcare Logistics. They've been a long time contributor health services in Anguilla. I wouldn't bother you to go down with the list, but just to say that their project that I'm actually working on, they intend to assist with medication for the patients in Anguilla who are diabetic and hypertensive, may not be covered under insurance, may not be 70 years older. Gap there where we know exists in terms of patients who are diabetic and hypertensive and doesn't have insurance coverage. It is critical for them to have their medication. Shops stepped in and pledged able to assist those individuals going forward. When we look at the Senior Shield, for example, I would have mentioned not only on the campaign trail, but here in this room and at these press conferences that we intend to expand and improve on the Senior Shield and Junior Shield. We are about to have some conversations with the two private pharmacies. I hope to send out an invitation to both proprietors of those institutions so that we can have a meeting, and I would want to invite them to cabinet, basically to see how we can work together and be able to provide the services that even those who are covered under the Senior Shield be able to access the private pharmacies in terms of their medication. We know for a fact that at the Princess Alexandra Hospital, From time to time, there are shortages of medications there through no fault of their own. Again, because of the relationship and the supply from the PPS, the Pharmaceutical Procurement Services, and OECS program. Time to time, they're short of the medication, and those who are over 70 years, in order to get their medication, they still will have to go to the private pharmacy and pay 100% of the cost. If we are a government and we really and truly want to assist our seniors, we must be able to have that negotiation and those conversations, the owners of the private pharmacies, to make sure that our people are able to access the medication that they need. I would have said it on various press conferences, and I will reiterate it here again, that the past administration, they thought about the Senior Shield. They brought it into being, and thanks to them, but not enough thought put into the whole aspect of the Senior Shield and Junior Shield. And as much expertise that they would have had in healthcare, it's an awful shame that this mechanism put in place would not have taken into consideration the limitations in terms of pharmaceuticals, as an example, at the government facility. They were the ones who brought it back in to government, dismantled the health authority and brought it back in. There are advantages and disadvantages, I must admit, to that. But at the end of the day, something like medication should have been thought out a little deeper than the way it was done. But be that as it may, this government will try our utmost to correct that and to move forward in terms of providing those medications for people here. Well, again, we are looking forward to establishing and installing the mammography equipment and ultrasound up at the Welch's Polyclinic. Again, the first of its kind. Government of Anguilla, Health Department, whether it was the Health Authority of Anguilla or the Department of Health Services, we never had the equipment, instruments in order to perform mammography studies, even though it done in Anguilla. It was at Hughes Medical Center, and we thank him for that. We intend, now we have purchased and install equipment at the polyclinic so that our people will be able to have those sort of studies going forward. So a lot of work has been going on, and as I said initially, I am pleased to see that movement in the right direction taking place. The question, willing to.
That was very comprehensive. I just wanted to ask Madam Premier, is Anguilla planning to become a full member of CARICOM? Right now we're an associate member. Are there any plans to become a full member?
Yeah, I think that that's a discussion that we need to have and to look at. I'm not sure in terms of previous administrations what the position was, but certainly when I attended the CARICOM meeting, I would have been apprised of the fact that some of the other overseas territories are seeking full membership at this point in time. Of course, not having had the background knowledge, I would have been for the first time becoming aware of that fully. So it's something that we need to look at. I know that based on the discussions, there's still a work in progress in terms of how that would work. As many persons may know, CARICOM membership, full membership is reserved for the independent countries, with the exception of Montserrat, and that was a little bit of a special situation a number of years ago. And the overseas territories are considered to be associate members. So there is a discussion that has to take place in terms of what that would look like, including the free movement of people and the Treaty of Chagaramas. And so all of those things have to be looked at in whole. And so it's a discussion I think that the people of Anguilla would probably want to have a conversation in relation to moving forward in something like that. Thank you. I think that brings us to the end of this government press conference. We want to thank you, those of you who are here in person and those who are joining via social media and radio, and have a blessed afternoon and a very productive week. Thank you.